Cool. Ready for our next caller?
Yeah, let's jump in.
Okay, so this one's from Missouri. Something weird happened in the sky in 1988. Christine, you are on with Richard and Ethan. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing well, thank you. So, what do you got for us?
Curious story, n equals 1. So this is definitely something that only happened one time and is curious. So in 1988, I was out of high school. I had a friend who was on leave from the Army, and we were sitting in my parents' home in Angus, New Mexico, and we're sitting there talking. All the lights to my parents' mobile home go out. And at this point, I've been working as an electrician with my father. So I knew because everything went out in the trailer that maybe it was at the main power supply at a pole outside the trailer. So my friend and I, we get up and I go out. Main electrical is not going out. And I had this feeling that something was watching us. And I looked over, and in the sky was a perfect orb. But it was bigger than an orb, but it had the very bottom of a spherical shape, was completely jet black, and I could see through the top of this orb, and it was a person, I'm assuming human, maybe alien, I don't know, but it had like a gas mask on or some type of headgear, and it was just sitting there hovering in the sky 200, 300 feet away, staring at us. So I told my friend, I said, hey, I'm going to go in and grab my father's binoculars. So I run back in, go to my parents' bedroom, grab my dad's binoculars, and so I go running out, and I pull up my binoculars to get a really good look in this orb. I can't find it. And I asked my friend, I said, Paul, what happened? He goes, I don't know. It just disappeared. I'm like, it just disappeared. He goes, yeah, 1 minute it was there, and the next second was gone. And then all the power to the mobile home completely went back on when it disappeared.
Could this have been? I'm going to jump in straight away with this. Could this be just a conventional aircraft? Could it be a conventional aircraft? Because you said you weren't, you couldn't identify whether the pilot was a human or something else. Could it not just be a conventional aircraft from a? Sorry.
I thought maybe in 1988 Paul and I. That was the gentleman's name. That it might have been a helicopter, but it was too close, and you can hear the rotors on a helicopter. And an airplane, at least back then, we didn't have the stealth bombers, didn't have anything that could just sit there and hover. So it was completely quiet and no sound, and it was a perfect sphere. It was a perfect bubble. So the top of it's like a soap bubble, but you could see all the way through the top, but the very bottom of it was complete black. It was like a one cockpit.
But you said it was
a bubble. It had absolutely no sound. Yeah.
You did say it was some distance away, and from certain angles, there are certain makes of helicopter that can look spherical. The cockpit section of them is actually kind of bubble shaped with black bottoms and a clear top. And depending on the distance, you may not have heard any sound.
Yeah, but this is a military. Yeah, no. I was with a military person who was in the military on leave, and we both agreed it wasn't a helicopter. And that, again, was 1988. Technology has changed a lot, I would say. It was also really close to Angus, New Mexico is not too far from Holloman Air Force Base. And for years, I often wondered if it was some type of secret technology that our own United States military had, but nothing of the sort had ever come out since 1980, anything closely like it. And this is the days before we knew the stealth bomber. And so those kept being identified in Area 51 potentially as UFOs. And I didn't know anything about UFOs until in the mid to late 2000 early 2000 because I wasn't interested. But I mean, it could have been a helicopter, but we sat there and talked, and it didn't go vertical, didn't go sideways, it didn't pull up straight. It just vanished with the flick of my wrist trying to pull up the binoculars to get a better look. But I still can see in my mind's eye. I know it's not a good one, but it did look like it had a gas mask, or what you might see an F-14 fighter pilot from like Top Gun with that type of equipment on their head. It looks sort of like that, but yet it was different. I know it's not a very good discussion.
So let's look at what the actual facts of what we have then. So we have something in the sky which could contain a human, which is near a military base,
right?
Which is wearing apparatus which we know the military wear. So what is it that kind of makes you think that it's not a military aircraft? Because everything you're saying just points to some kind of military aircraft. What specifically is it about it that makes you think it's military,
not? It could be military, but it's unlike anything that anybody's reported in the news or in debriefings or anything of this nature. So I'm just saying it's not a technology that I'm acquainted with. And one of my other friends I've talked to that was retired from NATO, he also can't think of anything that it might also be like when I talk to him. So again, who knows? I mean, really, I don't know. It was
military.
Curious,
Military personnel aren't always don't always have clearance to know everything that's going on. Just because somebody works in the military, it doesn't. I mean, I'm not going to name them, but there's one of the regular shows of this very show has military clearance, and there are things that they will know that many other people in the military don't. Just because you don't know something and you work in the military doesn't mean that it's not a military thing that's going off, unfortunately.
Yeah, this is 35 years ago, and I mean, they've had a lot of declassified stuff from the Pentagon from 35 years ago. I mean, so this was quite a while ago. I mean, you're absolutely right with clearance and what is being shared or not shared, but it is kind of curious that 35 years later, nothing of this, whatever this was, has leaked or been discussed.
It could be just simply be the case that it wasn't an interesting enough object to have leaked. It may just be a standard object that was misidentified.
It's possible.
That's good to hear.
But I did sketch it, and I did, yeah.
I'm loving the fact that you're so open to the possibility.
And there was, I'm sorry?
I'm just going to say I'm loving the fact that you're so open to the possibility that it could be just a standard thing. Same. And that says a lot about you as a person, that you're willing to, be open to that. I think that's fantastic. I'm very interested in why, when you are open to that, why you're kind of making this leap from standard to possibly something else. That's what's really interesting me about you. Now, you're such a nice person. I'm loving the conversation. Thank you for the conversation.
Well, one of the things I just want to say, one thing is that the reason my friend and I went outside of the trailer was all the power was out. And as soon as I flipped up the binoculars, it disappeared, and the power in the entire neighborhood came on, which, again, top secret stuff potentially, but it is curious that the power in the trailer went out and all the neighborhood, all the power went out. My parents' place set up on a hill, so I could look horizontally into this thing. So it's also just a number of weird coincidences all at the same time, which made it a curious thing. It was also weird that this person or whatever was in it was sitting there intentionally staring at us intensely and hung around long enough and then didn't disappear till I brought up my binoculars to get a really good look into that. we'll call the cockpit, for lack of a better word, but into the cockpit.
There's just one detail I'm not entirely sure of. When the power went out and you went outside, was the vehicle already there when you actually went outside, or did it come along after you'd done it?
The power went out. We were sitting in the living room chatting about stuff. All the power went out, and so I knew because everything went out all at once because I had electrical training. I worked as an electrician with my father. My dad was a very logical person and also had been a police officer, so trained me to be super logical. But anyway, I went outside to check the main power switch that was on a pole coming into the trailer, and I noticed all the stuff was out, and I was looking at the fuse box has an old tile and toggle switch. So I was looking at that, and I sensed something was staring at me, and that's when I looked over across the hill, down a little bit into something staring at me. And I was like, Paul, do you see that? He goes, yeah, I see that. I go, what is that? And we're staring at this round orb in the sky, hovering, and it was close enough that I can make an outline of this thing with like a gas mask on and some type of maybe goggles or something over the eyes staring at us. And I'm like, I'm going to go get the binoculars. What is that? So I ran back in. Lights are still off. I am fumbling to find my dad's binoculars. He usually kept them. He's also a backyard astronomer, and he has his own observatory. That's why we lived in New Mexico, to look at the night skies, because he was really into nebulas and things like this. So anyway, I find his binoculars, and I go back out, and when I flick my wrist up to look into that cockpit, it just vanishes. I can't find it in my binoculars, and I asked Paul, I said, what happened? He goes, it just disappeared. I mean, what do you mean it just disappeared? He's like, it just disappeared. And then we both realized the lights had gone back on.
So, go on, Ethan, sorry.
No, please.
I was just, the object disappeared. You didn't actually see it disappear. But the object disappeared.
I did not see it disappear because I was trying to look into the cockpit with my binoculars. And as you know, if you ever use binoculars, it takes a minute when you're looking through binoculars to move and look. When I brought him up to look at it, I couldn't find it. And then I brought down my binoculars. I said, I can't find it. Where'd it go? He goes, it just disappeared. I'm like, what do you mean? Did it fly away? Did it go up? Did it go sideways? What did it do? And he said, it just like disappeared. It didn't go anywhere. It just was there 1 second and was gone the next. And it was. And then the power was back on.
Is there a possibility that the power could...
Because I was...
Yeah, is there a possibility that the power could have come on? Is there a possibility that the power could have come on and the distraction of the power coming on could have made you miss the objects just fly away?
Well, we thought at the time was that when I flicked up the binoculars to look at it, that's when it just disappeared. And then right on the heels of it disappearing, we noticed the power was back on.
Right.
But they happened simultaneously I would say about the same time, but it just disappeared.
Okay.
So what brought us outside was that there was no power, and that's why we went outside to investigate what was going on. Yeah. And as I was at the fuse box on the power pole, what's called a power main, it also has its own breaker in it. All the places in New Mexico have this. It was code back in 1988. But then as I'm standing there looking at that, that's when I sensed something was staring at us, and I like poked Paul with my elbow. I'm like, do you see that? He goes, yeah, what is that? And then we were sitting there talking, staring at this thing as it's staring at us. It really felt like it was staring at us. And I could see whatever this thing was with some type of headgear on it. And the very bottom of the cockpit was like a perfect round sphere with a black bottom with clear glass that was perfectly spherical, like a soap bubble in the night sky. And there was enough ambient light in New Mexico that you could see through like a big round glass orb at the top.
Can I also just ask you, just for the benefit of our previous caller, with you being an electrician, can I just confirm that electricians do understand what electricity is and how it works?
Yeah, I would hope so, because I got high grades and high marks through shop in high school and then worked as my dad's electrician. I mean, back then I left the electrical world. That wasn't for me. And I went on to do a very different lifestyle in 1990. Actually, 1989, I go on to college and do something different. But yes, and I still can wire houses, and I can still fix things, and I can still tinker with electronics. So yes.
So
Just saying, I can. I know. Yeah.
We do have to wrap up this call in just a moment. Richard, did you have any further questions?
Okay.
No, I'm thank you for calling in. It's been a really interesting call. I think from what you said, if I was to put money on it, and I'd put quite a lot of money on it, that it is some kind of conventional aircraft that you've experienced. And I think the fact that the electricity went out and then came back on at the same time the object disappeared, I think that's not necessarily causation. The object didn't necessarily cause that. You just experience things, as you said yourself.
Correlation does not equal causation. I get that, but it is curious. Anyway, it is curious.
Yeah. I've really enjoyed listening to your experience, and I do thank you so much for calling in.
Thank you.
Fantastic conversation.
I appreciate it, and thank you for letting me talk.
Yeah, Christine, thanks for calling, and definitely always welcome to call back. We do the show every single Tuesday at 7 p.m.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Christine. Bye-bye. I'm definitely leaning towards military aircraft.
Yeah. And I'm not even necessarily leaning towards military aircraft. It sounds, as soon as she described it, I thought about one of the, I don't know what, my knowledge of aircraft is very limited. But one of those round Bell helicopters that you used to get, especially in the 80s. And if you look at that from a certain angle, that it looks almost exactly like a sphere.